Hello, hello, hello.
All right.
Let's dive in. We've got the we've got the smart ones, the intelligent ones. Don't tell the other group I said that. Um to help us dive into this conversation. So, Cadence, I'll let you lead with the questions here. I don't know if we need to pull them back up, but I think this is really important as y'all will be spending time over the summertime um, figuring out what those 5 scopes are to study and coming back to this group with economic feasibility. So let's start to think about, do you feel like we're on track, gentlemen, with benefits we want the development in the area to provide? We know we've talked about small business incubation. What other things in regards to wealth creation and benefits, and this is, again, broader development. I don't think we've dived down deep yet into specifically on the cover, but I'll open it to you, Mr. Washington, Mr. Modica, and to Bryson.
In that order?
Oh, it didn't have to be in that order, just to you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm working as well. I don't have any questions right now, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. When you think about functionality and the types of things that can be built on cover, and we recognize that at certain parts of the cover that we had single-story buildings versus a larger structure, the possibility of a larger structure in the center. To me, since it's going to be more of a transient demographic, at least my perception of it to this point in time, it's going to be more of a transient demographic. So performing arts, recording studio, for a single level, one that is able to be responsive, like billboard, that kind of stuff out in front of it, that would be able to navigate people coming into the district, coming into the environment, would have, information about what's going on in the place, and would allow artists, since we're already in a complex area where there's sports and entertainment, that there's some engagement facility for that single level building that could be at the entrance point coming off of White. And so that bearing that load for that cap, I would suggest that a single story building, somewhat about 10,000 square feet, or more, and I would like to see something like that in the front of that, in that lower level. That's my thoughts.
So those are great thoughts to start. I know initially we talked about cultural centers and that sort of thing. So I think this is really specific and the kinds of things that the Echo Northwest team needs to hear. I love the idea with the entertainment district and bringing in kind of the rich culture, performing arts, and what that could be. I know that there are some other areas in the country that have, like, I don't know, amphitheaters to where those performances could take place. I am unsure. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if Bryson or others might be more familiar. Is there something else happening near the Albina 1 building that has to do with artistic expression, etc.? Am I maybe missing that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So one thing that I've thought, is really wanting to maximize the proximity to the Moda Center, and maximize it in a way that generates community wealth, and also maximize it in a way that makes, like, when you go to the Moda Center, makes you want to hang around in the neighborhood, right? And so, thinking about places that people might go to before or after a Blazers game. So, a sports bar or restaurant or something like that. Something that's kind of gauged around the sort of evening crowd. Items like that, I think are the most interesting, and probably have some of the most ways to sort of draw the Moda Center into the neighborhood in a way where it's a symbiotic relationship, as opposed to being like you know, here's our neighborhood, and here's this other thing that's kind of borders it. Yeah, I mean, I also gotta echo John's comment about music, performing arts, that kind of thing, really kind of enhancing. I mean, really kind of thinking about any sort of the entertainment kind of, you know, some sort of nightlife, sports related, food, beverage, those kinds of uses seem to be the best, especially for on the cover versus the blocks that are off the cover, where you can start to think a little bit more about housing and things like that.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question? So like a bar or a restaurant could be a profit-making endeavor, whereas lots of times, almost all the time, performing arts centers are subsidized civic uses. And
Yeah.
and from your perspective, both of you who've talked about this, Mr. Washington too, would you want to lean one way or over another? Would you want to have both kinds?
No, we don't always think about dependency models. I mean, we hustlers, man. I mean, in that game, girl, well, I don't want to talk about Puffy right now, but but in that game, it doesn't always have to be waiting on somebody to afford your services. I mean, you can make it service oriented. I mean, you can make it an economic driver. There's something in it. People are rewarded by coming in, renting the space, production realities, all those things. So I don't look at that at all as a dependency model. I look at it as a model of making money. It's
Or
what I
could it
do.
serve both purposes,
Yeah.
right? Like, is
Yeah.
there that, it could be training at some part of the day, right? Could it serve both purposes, right?
Yeah. Or people can come in
Or
and do
performance at
productive
night.
stuff, right? Or they can have shows, they can come in and do music lessons if they choose to, all those kind of art, studios, that kind of stuff. So no, I didn't look at it as a model that would say we would be looking for grant dollars, or, not unless it had to be a nonprofit, but those vehicles are effective money making models. Hip hop made people billions of dollars, girl. So I don't know what you're talking
So
about.
maybe less around a performing arts center, and so I'm hearing like there are opportunities for rental of recording during the day. Maybe there's also a performance opportunity. There's food and
Yeah.
other things that could take place in the evening time. You're speaking my language because I've spent the majority of my career recording, but I think there's maybe some kind of creative dual usage that could maximize opportunity, like both of you are saying, around this entertainment district, leveraging it during the day with some kind of opportunities for entertainment and relaxation and connection to the moda in the evening.
Yeah, world class studios in there, podcast shows, all that kind of stuff. I mean, where it can bring in advertising dollars or support dollars, that something is driving it. It's just not something sitting there waiting for somebody to occupy. There's an entity, there's a business in there, and it's driving something. So, but the other question I wanted to ask you was that there is a larger building that's even more important, that the bearing weight can hold in the middle of that. To me, that's a discussion that I'm interested in having, because it's a multiple story building. It has a lot more moving parts and potentials to it. So the thought would be, what would we put in a building such as that size, and the potential that we would have that can generate some serious money? And I don't know if it would be a primary anchor or something like that, but that conversation. But this one, like I said, it's the smaller one-story buildings. It's at the gateway, receiving people in the transient reality that's coming in. There's some entertainment, there's some social engagement, but there's performing arts, and there's a vehicle driving it. When people come into it, it's just that whole entertainment kind of space. But don't have to be shut down because of a game ain't going on or something like that. It can be active. We can keep it lit. There can be entertainment coming in there, all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm not talking about low end stuff. I'm talking about world class stuff. Not some some bar or some hip hop thing or some little small thing. I'm talking about some serious performing arts studios and recording stations and that kind of stuff that's in there. So when artists and everybody come and they overnight and they need to drop a joint before the play or before the show the next day, you know, there's a place that they can come and do all that. Right now, they don't have a place to come do all that.
John, in your ideal, you just mentioned kind of the, you know, a 3-story. I don't know, for those of you guys who might remember like a John's Landing on Macadam, where there was multiple businesses, there was eateries, there were I don't know if you all recall the space I'm talking about. It's not there any longer. I don't remember, but is that kind of in the mind, or you're thinking your thought about what a kind of more storied building could hold, et cetera?
Well, what's the young man there that worked with ODOT that's with the green shirt on and the stripe right
James.
there? Who is that?
James.
With glasses on, next to Modica. Yeah, you. What's your name again?
James.
James, there you go. James, you remember the stuff that you showed us with the bearing, the weight bearing, where's the potential, some stuff. You got any more of that stuff laying around that you can show us?
Yeah, I can get the map back.
Yeah, just some of the scale of the building potential that was on that site, so we can just stimulate something.
Yeah. Site, I'll pull it up, but site 2A is essentially a half block, like a downtown block.
Right.
I'll get the map.
Yeah, but that was a sizable potential for a sizable building there.
That's up to 3 stories. That's right. And then
Yeah.
site 5 is larger than that.
Oh, really? So that other one was even bigger, but then there was a smaller one down on the far end also, right? So you
Yep.
got two
It's another
separate
half
stories
block.
on other at opposite ends.
Yep.
So that single story thing could be really interesting, but it should be something that's driving and pulling people in, whatever that is. But that bigger building is something, I don't know. Modique may have something on his mind about that, but you know, that's supposed to
Definitely
be
have,
pretty. How many square feet potential was that building?
All right, I'm gonna pull up I'll share my screen. I don't have the one with the square footages on it. I'm trying to chew gum and walk at the same time. Can you see that?
Nope. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, this is it's not current, but it's close enough. So you can see between Vancouver and Flint is a standard 200-foot block, and site 2B is essentially a half of a standard block. So that's a potential large up to 3-story half block building. There's a ton of those in Portland that seem to be really productive. Site 3 is a compromise just because of its triangular shape, but it is also roughly a half block, slightly larger than a half block. Site 5 is like it's the 100% corner. It's not a perfect square, but it is. You can see that you could get a building that is as big as a full block. And then 8 is somewhat promising, although I would submit this could be a really interesting hardscape outdoor event thing, sort of in relation to site 9, which could be really tall because it's off cover. Is this helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I'm thinking of too, and I want to make sure I mention it, is I know, and I don't know how far along they are, but I know the Oregon Black Pioneers were thinking of a place to put a museum.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be another thing. I think they were looking at like the 12,000 square foot range, which could potentially fit on one of the smaller blocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely in line with what I've heard many of you talk about, and Mr. Edwards, who's unable to be with us, about some sort of history. Like you say, you've got Oregon Black Pioneers, history of the you know, Blacks in Oregon, and what that could be to attract. It puts to mind maybe like the Brian Stevenson Museum in Birmingham. I think
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things too, like when I'm trying to think of what makes sense to put on the covers versus put off the covers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously size is a key factor. You know, if we're wanting to do a bigger, heavier building, it makes sense to try to do it off the covers. If we're trying to do a smaller but still standalone space, like if we wanted to have Oregon Black Pioneers do a museum and it was only going to be 10,000 square feet, but they wanted their own standalone space and maybe with some outdoor space, then on the cover would work well for that. But you know, thinking about, you know, some of these other components, I mean, yeah, really, is there anything other than size?
Well, think
Yeah,
about
what
where
are
we
the
came
buildings?
from in the conversation, Brian. But we was
What?
talking, it was trying to sell us on a park in the beginning. Remember that was
Yeah.
supposed to be all wildlife or something, something over there, you know, a jungle, or go to the park. And then we said, nah, well, you know, and then they came back and let us know that, you know, some weight bearing and some load bearing things could happen, you know. And from the look of things, I mean, there could be some really exciting large things, but for me, the foundation of this site is people cannot live there, right? So that part is what we're talking about, is pretty much so a transient environment, right? People gonna be going and coming. And so ain't nobody gonna be staying overnight. So what could we be doing to make some money during the day in that, you know, in those larger buildings? I mean, other than, you know, maybe renting them, I mean, as far as a lease space is concerned, but the other part is what kinds of things can we put in there that would generate on a larger economic development strategies where we can go wide and go deep, you know, and it's something that's producing that, you know, not us just how you say, just hiring somebody or whatever, that those functionality of those large buildings serve a larger demographic and a larger population. And it can be centered, like whenever I think about things like the jewelry marts in different cities that you go to, the diamond centers, right? You go there, there's a large swash of people doing a bunch of the similar things, but there's a center, there's a capitalized system, a system of operation going on there, you know, that's generating lots of money and revenue. So if we can get things like that, even as Johnson and Johnson, somebody to come in, you know, somebody associated with something. We got a lot of hair care product people, you know, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, so, you know, could we do cohorts in these larger buildings to where we bring sector of businesses together and, you know, and companies that have similarity in mind, what they do, and put them all like in an area, you know, something like that. I mean, just a stimulating drive and people coming in, that transient ability, and how mobile will all of that space be? Because if there's no traffic or nothing, is there traffic going through that stuff, big guy? Are we gonna be driving across them, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the
Streets
street
would be
grid
going,
will be
yeah,
replaced and rebuilt,
right,
but we're not pushing cars through these individual parcels and sites.
right. And are they able to park in those spaces, in those, on those
That's
things?
something we're gonna work with y'all on, is the design of the local streets. I'd submit that everywhere we can have on-street parking, we should have on-street parking to support development. You know, there's just a lot of retailers will want that. We're gonna need loading zones, we're gonna need ADA parking zones, we gotta do all that stuff.
You know, I find it very interesting that y'all ask us this question like this, and we're talking about this when places like up there on Vancouver just pop up overnight, and they fully thrive, and people walking all up and down doing the businesses, and they, you know, you built 10 blocks in 2 years, in 3 years up that street, and every place that I see white epicenters that are built like that, there are people moving about. But you go into these little urban communities where this kind of stuff, you don't see nobody. You see shopping centers and shit, but very, very scarce. People don't come in. Even like the district right now, you know, people don't come into the district because there's nothing vibrant, nothing popping, you know? So we want to bring back the pop, the vibrancy.
Love that.
So you're thinking about the waterfront. I mean, one of the key things I think drives some of that traffic in the waterfront is the food. Like getting some good, like a couple of good, like, you know, thinking like anchor tenant type thing that really draws people to it, or draws people to stay, or draws people at hours that aren't during events and things like that.
Yeah, Mr. Modica, I see your hand.
Yeah, I basically am in agreement with everything that has been said. I was going to comment for John to get out of my head, but since we're recorded and state live,
I love you, Mo.
I
love you, boy.
also was going to say that the waterfront in Vancouver is our model. The other model that we haven't spoken about is Fifth Street down in Eugene.
Yes,
So
Oh,
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
yes,
And it is compact enough, but thriving enough to support not only brick and mortar tenants with a little robustness to their ability to run a
yes.
business, but beginning businesses. And if it's walkable and it is parkable, you know, what we do there must be agile enough so that we're just not stuck with some buildings with economic downturn, right? So I like civic spaces that are open, that feed people, that have things for folks to look at, that incubate markets that are just opening up and beginning. Obviously, what we don't have in the city of Portland or the state of Oregon is African American or Indigenous Peoples Museum. You know, it's nice that Oregon Historical Society dedicates a little bit of their space, but we have artists, poets, writers, performers, legacy families with history, right? And what better use? And of course, to me, education and something that brings governance back to our community. So you don't have to be running downtown for everything, right? I mean, that's just a drag, right? And if you are limited in your ability for transportation and you don't ride a bike or you need translation services or that kind of thing, then I think that there should be some type of anchor space for governance and also health and well-being. You know, we go to Emmanuel when we sick, beat up, or about to die. We don't go to Emmanuel for wellness. We need wellness, well food. You know, could we have a small plot that basically be farm to table so we could have a fresh food market?
That's beautiful. Just like Noble Rot has their own like farm
Yes.
on the rooftop. That's excellent.
Yes.
And Fifth Street is a
Yes.
great example. It's very, very
Yes.
vibrant. It's packed around entertainment. When I'm there for duck games, Fifth Street is the place before and after it is moving.
Yeah, that
So
vertical
Fifth Street
farming.
also has hotel
Yeah.
space.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And they
Well, I mean,
built the Gordon, so that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think
Very
that's probably
beautiful.
something that you wouldn't necessarily want on the cap.
Right. But
like,
there's
if you-
the adjacent properties, right?
Yeah,
But
you could
off
build
cap.
you could build something up right off the cap.
Yeah,
Or
I think
even,
that vertical farming too would probably be really interesting
Yes.
in those single level buildings. You know,
I can't remember which shoe company had a test run at a indoor track facility. You know, the one thing that Oregon has never had is the Olympics, right?
Mhm.
And we now have space where we could complement the complex that is already adjacent to all of this in a way that suggests portability, right? So you could have the motor, you could have the Coliseum or whatever's going to be there, and then the portable indoor track or court for tennis or a world-class aquatic center. You know, things that people are talking about wanting to do, but unfortunately, I don't think they're going to pull it off, right? You need major infrastructure and investors and a common will, you know? So that's what I had to say. But John, thank you. Now get out of my head, brother.
I will, bro. But you know,
Okay.
but I think that whole sports arena, I mean, that whole sports center area, you know, begets each other. You know, more of that stuff we can bring to more utilization, more draw, more entertainment, more opportunities. It's because it's transient, nobody's staying there. It's about making money, right? And I think that the vertical thing is about really the farming and the greenery. I was also curious on, I know that ATV and all them went for the air rights mode, but I was interested in the power rights. Like that, will that funnel be creating a exhaust or fan or generator system that is pumping, that circular system that we can get electricity or power from?
It's not the current plan. No, it is a passive tunnel environment. The circulation happens because of the motor vehicles that move through it. In the case of a conflagration, a big fire, there is an active fan system, but it's not a source of power.
Could there be a
No.
source of energy in that system anywhere that can be somehow driven and controlled by somebody and generating money?
I mean, ODOT has done large solar arrays in their right of way that generate some amount of power. I don't see this area being large enough to do something like that.
Well, I beg to differ. I know some people that probably come in and show you that you're missing an opportunity. But I mean, and then of course the planting, the types of plants and things you're going to use on the top, on the cover. It seems like there's a lot of square footage, and it's just not going to be barren space, right? It's going to be occupied with some form of gardening and shrubbery, right? And it's going to need to be watered and serviced by someone and all that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's another opportunity.
I definitely think kind of where John, or it sounds like John's going partially, is not underutilizing the roof space. And thinking about rooftop parks, gardening, solar, make rooftop patios for restaurants, like all that sort of stuff. So like on days like today, you can have tons of people.
Yeah, there's
tons of
golden
people
in their
hanging out.
hills.
Yeah.
I wonder before we get to our time. Oh, Megan, you go ahead.
I was just saying we need an outdoor HAAB meeting space on the cover.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
You all, I want you guys to, because you guys' brains are really moving in this creative space. Think about programmed open space. And I know originally when we were kind of diving into this, and forgive me if I'm diving back too far, but we had talked about Russell and the courts and the namings and what the pillars could represent, blah, blah, blah. But thinking about also on the cover, is there opportunity and what could open, what you all might envision for programmed open space? Because some of it will be open, right? You won't have buildings butted up against each other on that whole cover. So give us some thoughts around open and what programmed open space could look like.
So I think an easy way to go, right? If we have some sort of museum, either Black pioneers or like Black entertainment figures or something like that, having an open space connected to that, where you've got, maybe some statues or some other just kind of square that feeds into whatever the theme of the museum is and kind of extends what the museum is showing outside. That's probably the first place I'd go. And I mean, really just generally any sort of square or history telling thing that could talk to the history of the neighborhood, especially the history of the site, and maybe even just be sort of a historic marker. This is what it was originally, this is what it became, and this is what it is now, kind of thing. I think would be kind of cool.
On the farm to table question, do you have interest in sort of community gardens or other kinds of food production on the cover for places that aren't kind of building up?
Yeah, if it supports farm to table for a market,
Yeah,
or fresh culinary that, spaces that are agile enough to do that, and teaching spaces and wellness and healing, right? I mean, those things are what we don't have.
Yes.
50, 100 years from now, somebody will make another decision, but right now we can make a decision that's going to be long lasting and fruitful for the community.
Yes.
Right. I don't like looking at things from a poverty or a walk of scourge perspective.
Yeah.
We got that. You can go all across America.
Mhm.
You know, we got MLK boulevards everywhere. If you travel to America, you know what
But
I'm
this one
talking
ain't
about.
gonna get that bad, bro.
Feel me?
We're gonna let
Okay.
it get that bad.
And then we got murals and memoriams and all of that. Look, that's fine, but if we're gonna have a museum or a space of learning, you know, have you ever been to LA and seen a Holocaust museum? Right? The Wiesenthal Center, right? I mean, so if we're gonna have open space that's programmable, do we want it to be that as opposed to what's uplifting and strength-based and inspiring? That's what I feel and think.
Yeah, like none of that poverty building stuff, you know, we get up world-class things. We build to the best that we can build to. We don't, you know, we don't skimp. It's like, you know, just because it's that idea, we're gonna give you just that amount of effort, you know? I mean, I think it was Strickland back in Philly that said, you know, when you start investing minimally in people, they perform the same way. You know, and I think that it's important for us to make sure that the quality of things that we build last a long time, have an attraction, have mass market appeal, and people are inspired by them, and people are brought to them by the designs and by what we build. So as long as we have that standard going on, I'm in big support of where we're going with this. But the idea is I'm not trying to build a dependency model and a poverty model.
That's good.
When we were doing the support bit of the highway, we talked about art, rotating artwork,
Yeah.
having it be a place to showcase current people, showcase current people's work, that sort of thing. And that could also be cool, especially thinking about bigger projects. You know, like the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, which I sometimes go to when I go visit my parents. They've got several places out around their museum where they've got some places where they've got rotating statues and pieces of art, and a couple of things that are permanent. And so, and they're all generally either current, modern, artistic. Not too many that are kind of, you know, the negative, remember the tragedy kind of type things. And I mean, I think that's right as far as a sentiment. I think we're not trying to create a place where we remember the tragedy. We're trying to create a place where we're building the future.
We only have 1 minute, so I just wanted to let you all know they'll be moving you, and I didn't want you to be mid-sentence.
You want to take it out of here, Mo?
I'm good. I think we're the best group. How about that?
Well done. Very robust conversation. Look forward to more. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting thing for our children's children. Yeah. Well, maybe they're giving us a little.
Yeah, before they go, is that waterfront going to be available? Is the waterfront down in there? Is that included in this?
Not in this study, but I know that was mentioned in the work that ABT and the city are studying in regards to feasibility on that waterfront site. If I'm understanding that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was just going to say that's looking a little bit more further out at possibilities further out. Yeah.
Got you. All right. Bye, man.
See you all back in the main room.